Okay, welcome to part 2. In part 1, we went through the section of the hearing where Minijin was questioned by her own lawyer. And that alone was already long because she spent so much of it building a narrative around herself. So I tried to keep most of my commentary until the end, except I failed. I could not help but go back to the full court document for the ADOR versus NewJeans case because it just lays out clearly all the facts that the judge looked into that contradict Minijin's arguments. And in this video, we're moving into part 2. And this part is quite different. So this is a section of the hearing where HYBE's lawyers question her directly. So there's no friendly framing and no soft landing, right? And here's the moment where her testimony starts colliding again with the KakaoTalk messages, the negotiation records, the contract terms, and the internal documents that were submitted to the court. And what you will notice right away, again, is a repeated pattern. When the evidence is specific, she says she doesn't remember. She doesn't remember. She's going to say that a lot. And when the evidence is clear, she says it's being misinterpreted. Okay? And when the evidence contradicts her, she shifts responsibility to someone else. Usually, in this case, the deputy CEO, Lee Sang-woo. So in this video, I'll read through the second half of the hearing for you guys, just like last time. And again, I will try to keep my thoughts minimal until the translation is done, because this section is pretty long too on its own. And then at the end, I will break down briefly what stands out and why this part of the testimony raised even more questions than the first one. All right. Let's get into part 2. And for those of you who just joined, I'll also read and translate the beginning portion where the article, the journalist, briefly summarizes the case, the context. Okay? Here it is. By the way, the title of the article is Minijin says, Deputy CEO's testimony that I plan to take NewJeans for 3 billion Korean won. He said it under pressure. So that title alone says a lot about Minijin's pattern. All right. Says, former ADOR CEO Minijin responded to most of the KakaoTalk messages presented in court by saying she doesn't remember, or that the interpretation is different. 기억이 안 난다. 해석이 다르다. She doesn't remember, or the interpretation is different. On the afternoon of November 27th, the Seoul Central District Court Civil Division 31st held the third hearing in the lawsuit filed by Minijin and 2 others against HYBE regarding the payment of stock sale proceeds tied to her put option. The court simultaneously heard the 5th session of HYBE's countersuit seeking confirmation of termination of the shareholders' agreement involving Minijin and another former ADOR executive. Up to this point, both sides have fiercely disputed the validity of Minijin's put option. In November of last year, Minijin notified HYBE that she would exercise her put option on her ADOR shares. Under the contract, the calculation is based on the average operating profit of the last 2 fiscal years, 2022 and 2023, multiplied by 13, divided by the total number of shares. The shareholders' agreement allows Minijin to exercise the put option on 75% of her 18% stake in ADOR, which amounts to 13.5%. ADOR recorded an operating profit of 4 billion won in 2022 and an operating profit of 33.5 billion won in 2023. Based on this, Minijin would be entitled to an estimated payout of around 26 billion Korean won. At the previous hearing, the court questioned HYBE CLO Jung Jin-soo and conducted direct examination of Minijin. Jung-Jin-Soo testified that Min-Jin had asked to raise the put option multiplier from 13x to 30x, that he had received internal and external reports describing suspicious behavior such as her meeting with Japanese investors, and that Min-Jin had been drafting documents, including one titled HYBE's 7 Deadly Sins. Min-Jin denied all of those points, saying the claims were not true. Continuing from the previous hearing, the court moved on to the direct examination of Min-Jin. The questioning began with HYBE's side and then shifted to Min-Jin's legal team. Interesting. HYBE's attorney asked, "You said you weren't aware of the non-compete clause and learned about it by chance. When exactly was that?" Min-Jin replied, "It was around November or December 2023. I was looking into how I could make use of my shares. So I checked the documents. How I could make use of my shares. So I checked." Okay. Regarding a KakaoTalk message where Min-Jin said she pushed the mothers of the members to front the complaint email because she thought she might run into contractual issues herself, Min-Jin said, "It doesn't mean I shared the shareholders' agreement with the parents. The context was only the eyelid copying issue. That was the only thing we discussed. Everyone understood there were limits to what I could do as a representative. I'm the CEO. The CEO is the artist agent." What is she? When she was asked, "Why couldn't you raise the issue yourself when an artist could?" Min-Jin responded, "That sounds like nitpicking. There's a particular position a subsidiary CEO holds in the governance structure. I had already touched 방 시혁's sore spots. 영린을 견드렸단 말이다. In that situation, would raising the issue myself have worked properly? I thought there would be limits." This isn't a legal theory answer. When she was asked if she thought raising the issue herself would violate the shareholders' agreement, she said, "I didn't think that way. I never connected those dots. I was completely absorbed in raising the plagiarism issue." As for the KakaoTalk message saying this might cause contractual problem, 계약상 문제될 것 같은데, Min-Jin said, "It could refer to several contracts. I'm not sure if the shareholders' agreement is included. Even if it's not wrongdoing, it could be misunderstood. If there's wrongdoing inside the company, staying silent is also a problem. And knowing how the other party reacts, I knew they might twist it and push back hard." And in this case, the other party probably refers to HYBE. On the renegotiation of the shareholders' agreement, HYBE's legal team said, there were 2 rounds of negotiations between both legal representatives, meaning legal representatives of HYBE and Min-Jin. In the minutes from the first round, there is already discussion of the put option price. Later discussions also involved stock options and the put option. Doesn't this show that financial compensation was actually the main issue? Min-Jin replied, "No, at the time, HYBE CEO Park Ji-won told me that besides the non-compete clause, there was also the matter of stock options. But my lawyer said the stock options were worthless and that HYBE had misled me about them. That's why I was told that part needed to be fixed." Okay. And then HYBE's attorney then said, "The non-compete clause you objected to appears in the meeting minutes," meaning meeting notes, transcript. HYBE proposed setting the non-compete period as a length of employment plus 1 year. Your legal team responded that the proposal seemed to match what you wanted. Doesn't that mean the issue was already resolved? Yeah, because it turns out, even though Minijin is saying that, oh, I was in the slave contract, whatever, it turns out that HYBE really tried to let her have most of what she demanded. And again, most of what she demanded already was ridiculous. But HYBE did that those concessions. Let's see what how Minijin answered to that point. She answered, no, if it had been resolved, my lawyers would have said the non-compete is cleared. We can move on to other issues. But it remained an unresolved problem. Park Ji-won never gave me a clear answer. Okay, but it sounds like there are meeting minutes. So there's evidence. But Minijin keeps going back to Park Ji-won, this guy, the former CEO of HYBE. HYBE's legal team asked, Vice President, VP, former VP, Lee Sang-woo, sent you the meeting minutes the day after the first negotiation and reported the contents to you. Do you remember that? Minijin replied, 아니요, no. HYBE continued, in that report, he told you that HYBE was open to discussing revisions to the non-compete clause, and you responded, 이건 고무적이네. That's encouraging. Do you remember that? Minijin said, I don't remember, but I would need to see what came before and after that message. She loves the context when she's in a difficult position, right? She said, the date is March 6th. And without the surrounding context, I cannot know why I said that. If the lawyers at Sejong had told me it was encouraging, I probably would have remembered. Maybe I just don't remember what VP Lee said. Yeah, she's obviously trying to deflect, or she's saying something like, 여러분 학교 얘기했는지 아니면 세종에서 공적 얘기를 해서 기억했을 텐데 이 대표 얘기를 기억 못하는 건지. And I don't know. This is not the actual recording. It's a part of the article. Even though I think this journalist tried very hard to, relay these sentences and her remarks as she said. It kind of sounds like she's trying to trail off or something here. And here, she's partly blaming on the Sejong lawyers. If the lawyers at Sejong had told me it was encouraging, I probably would have remembered. Maybe I just don't remember what VPL said. I don't know. Something like that. HYBE then said, you claimed you were never shown the HYBE 7 Deadly Sins document. HYBE expressed willingness to revise the non-compete clause, and it seems you were informed. Yet, you still attacked HYBE publicly using the slave contract narrative. Minijin responded, Vice President Lee wrote that document. I never received it. It was his own interpretation. Asking me about something he wrote is strange. Again, that Vice President, Lee Sang-woo, he's such a mystery. Did he really agree to Minijin openly blaming everything on him in court? Wow. Regarding the KakaoTalk messages, Minijin added, it's hard to know how far back I'm supposed to explain. When you suddenly pull up a KakaoTalk screenshot, I find myself thinking, did I say that? I really don't remember. All right, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Let's keep reading. I find myself thinking, did I say that? I really don't remember. Although I'm pretty sure she knows exactly what was going on. HYBE made proposals they knew I could never accept. But if you take just one piece out of the whole conversation, it looks unclear. I can't remember the dates for every message. So from the witness stand, I really don't know where to start or stop. HYBE then said, it appears Vice President Lee sent you a summary. It includes items like 4. Non-compete and proposed alternatives for disposing of the extra 5% stake. It notes there was some progress, but that it didn't seem favorable. Okay, it appears VP Lee sent you a summary. It includes items like number 4, non-compete, and proposed alternatives for disposing of the extra 5% stake. It notes there was some progress, but that it didn't seem favorable. Heejin answered, I remember this because I don't pay much attention to Lee's explanations. For me, the only thing that mattered was whether the non-compete was lifted or not. If either Lee Sang-woo or the lawyers had told me the issue was resolved, I would have felt it was resolved. But that never happened. So from my perspective, negotiations were still ongoing. So yeah, she keeps trying to portray herself as this, like, you know what I'm saying? As if Lee Sang-woo knew everything, and she didn't know a single thing, what was going on. But if you actually look at the conversations between, Lee Sang-woo and Heejin, you will know. You will figure out instantly the nature of the conversation between these two people. Heejin was giving clear orders. Although in some instances, it kind of sounds like Lee Sang-woo was taking the initiative because he had all these plans and ideas. But yeah, this is her plan, and probably the plan that Sejong lawyers either suggested or agreed to for this specific hearing, saying that, I don't know, Lee Sang-woo did it. Yeah. And yeah, I was innocent. Something like that. When HYBE asked, did you propose raising the earnings multiple to 30 times? Heejin replied, that wasn't me. Oh. My lawyer proposed it. 제가 한 게 아니라 변호사님이 제안하셨다. My lawyer proposed it. Okay. The lawyer did so without asking for my approval or consent. And she said, 놀랍게도 그랬다. Shockingly, yes. Without checking with me. I delegated everything because I didn't want to manage the deal details myself. I gave broad authorization. I was extremely busy at the time, so I told them only to update me on the final outcome. Now, does Sejong lawyer agree to this remark? Now she's blaming on her own lawyer. It's not 100% clear whether she's referring to Sejong lawyer, but I'm assuming that. Let me read that one more time. So HYBE asked, did you propose raising the earning multiple to 30 times? Heejin replied, that wasn't me. My lawyer proposed it. The lawyer did so without asking for my approval or consent. Shockingly, yes. Shockingly, yes, without checking with me. I delegated everything because I didn't want to manage the deal details myself. I gave broad authorization. I was extremely busy at the time, so I told them only to update me on the final outcome. Now, she was a type who cared very much, like the details of a contract. When she was asked, did you also request the authority to terminate or renew the artist's exclusive contracts? Heejin replied, I had absolutely no idea. Later, I even asked my lawyer, was something like that really in there? I asked, was that part of the exclusive contract terms? And the lawyer said, it's something that can be included in a shareholders agreement. It's not an unusual clause. Questions then move to the Project 1945 document prepared by the former ADOR deputy CEO, referred to as 이모 씨, as Mr. Lee, 이상우. Minijin said, I didn't know he made that document. Wow. Hold up. 이상우. So the court mentions 이상우's name at least, at least 9 times. Nowhere in the record are conversations between Lee-sang-woo and individuals such as conversation between Minijin and individuals such as Lee-sang-woo. Is there any statement suggesting that her actions were intended for the protection of the NewJeans? Around February 2024, Lee-sang-woo, who had been newly recruited by Minijin as vice president, Minijin recruited that guy as deputy CEO of ADOR. He said in a KakaoTalk group chat, making things difficult for them and gaining our freedom. That's my plan for ADOR. To this, Minijin replied, that would be nice, thereby expressing agreement with his statement. Again, this is the court final ruling on NewJeans versus ADOR case, written by the court. On March 29th, 2004, Minijin told Shin Dong-hun, ADOR internal director, and Lee Sang-woo, change of plans, we're moving up the timeline. Send the first message on April 3rd. Don't talk to the press yet. We'll prepare for the public narrative, media offensive. They will probably contact us around Monday, the 8th or 9th, but I think they will change their position. They will never admit anything or stay silent. When that happens, we go public. Press campaign, lawsuit, send our message, see how they respond, and then we make it public after the 11th. That timing will fit best. Does this really sound like a woman who just doesn't know anything and is innocent? No, she was the master. She was the big boss for these two guys. Next. On the next day, April, Minijin shared a draft complaint email intended to be sent to Kim Tae-ho and told Lee Sang-woo, change the tone. Make it sound like a man, maybe like one of the fathers. It can sound angry or even a bit old-fashioned, not feminine. Start with the strong first line saying that Kim Tae-ho's last email provoked more anger and revealed HYBE's attitude. Right, if he stays silent now, what guarantees there they won't copy again next time? Why must even the parents be forced to speak up? Make it sound indignant and scolding. This indicates that Minijin personally instructed Lee to rewrite the email to appear as if written by a father, fabricating an impression of parental outrage over Alice's alleged plagiarism of NewJeans. We went over this part in the part 1 video. On April 20th, Minijin told Shin Dong-hun and Lee Sang-woo, regarding HYBE's alleged album dumping practices, prepared a list of things we can signal the FTC to investigate, what data to request, and what areas to probe. We have to give them hints on where to start their investigation. They're not familiar with the inside details, so we need to filter and guide what to look into. Create an itemized list of what they should examine, even examples they can cite. When they make excuses, tell them to dig into this or that, go that far. Through these directions, Minijin not only planned to report HYBE to the FTC, but also began preparing internal materials to guide the FTC on which aspects of HYBE's business it should investigate, a form of preemptive coordination. When Lee Sang-woo again cautioned, this is the caution that an FTC filing could be risky, saying blah blah blah, that we should be careful, Minijin replied, being tied up in the audit committee isn't a risk. Losing our justification to make a public announcement is a real risk. This statement demonstrates that Minijin's true intent was to damage HYBE's public image and push HYBE towards selling ADOR, not to protect NewJeans or address public grievances. Minijin also told Lee Sang-woo, about that investor you're meeting, be careful what you say. People might think we're stirring all this up because we want to leave. Don't let it look that way. Once the disputes escalate, investors will start showing interest anyway. This remark aligns with the prior message Lee Sang-woo sent to MHJ on March 19th, where he reported meeting a contact who had discussed potential multi-billion won investment sources interested in K Entertainment. MHJ's response shows that she was aware of and encouraged such independence planning while being careful not to reveal this motive prematurely. The chats were lawfully collected during HYBE's audit with consent from Lee Sang-woo, one of the participants, for audit purposes. Hence, they are admissible as evidence. All right, let's go back to the article. So again, when she was asked about the Project 1945 document, she said that I didn't know he made it. I didn't know that Lee Sang-woo made the document. And when she was asked, the very first item in the document is changed to the shareholders' agreement. Mr. Lee wasn't even a party to the agreement, yet he put that at the top. Are you saying, so this is lawyer asking, HYBE lawyer asking, are you saying he drafted it without any discussion with you? She said, yes. Later, I even messaged him asking, why are you so obsessed with this? There are messages where I scold him about it. Okay, so earlier she was blaming on Sejong lawyer, and now she's blaming on Mr. Lee Sang-woo. And in both cases, she's claiming that those individuals acted on behalf of her without her consent or agreement, and without her consent or approval. HYBE's attorney pointed out, a month before the 1945 document, you and Mr. Lee discussed listing the names of HYBE executives and figuring out their weaknesses, 약점, so you could pit them against each other. 이가 이제, wow, yeah, pitting them against each other, that's one of the main angles that she and Sejong lawyers are taking in this hearing, right? Try to damage the relationships between HYBE executives. Like earlier in part 1, she talked a lot about Park Ji-won, the former CEO of ADOR, and So Sung-jin, the founder of Source Music, and Bang Seo, Hitman Bang, and Chairman Bang. Now, guess how MHJ responded to this point. So HYBE's attorney pointed out, you and Mr. Lee Sang-woo discussed listing the names of HYBE executives and figuring out their weaknesses so you could pit them against each other. MHJ responded, huh? That was just chatter. I love how this journalist included her initial immediate reaction. 응? Like in English, like, huh? 응? 그냥 수다다. That was just chatter. When she was asked whether she ordered VP Lee to create the document, she said, where in there is any instruction from me? Mr. Lee probably had some personal resentment or disappointment toward those people. He was simply talking excitedly on his own. Yeah, I mean, fair point. Lee Sang-woo did seem kind of excited and talkative in some portions of the KakaoTalk conversations between him and MHJ, like laying out all his ideas and plans. Now, HYBE's side, HYBE lawyer continued. Mr. Lee said he was so absorbed in the idea that he titled the document 1945. That was the year when Korea got liberated from colonialism, right? He titled the document 1945, and that you instructed him to organize ways to pressure HYBE's executives or torment HYBE executives, which is why he wrote it. Are you saying that never happened? MHJ replied, No, I never told him that. He told me he named it after the beer bottle in front of him. It had no meaning. 1945 beer. Is this even real? Like, what was she saying? Did she really say all these in court? Beer bottle in front of him. It had no meaning. I've asked. So you're saying Mr. Lee did everything on his own and you knew nothing about it? Okay, let me say this in Korean. 본인은 이두 부대표가 혼자서 다 알아서 한 거고 본인은 모른다. So they asked it. Minijin said, yes. And because they had nothing to pin on me, they threatened the deputy CEO and dragged me in as bait. They told him, if you don't cooperate, we'll send you abroad and won't file lawsuit. I'm kind of thinking, maybe Kim and-jang lawyers, as they questioned Minijin, were thinking, on the one hand, she's the most ridiculous person they have ever met. And on the other hand, thinking this is just the easiest case we have ever taken. I don't know. Because there are like evidence that have been laid out right in front of them. And of course, Kim and-jang and HYBE has way more evidence that we don't know about, probably, you know? HYBE asked, or HYBE's attorney pressed further. It seems like you are shifting everything you discussed with Mr. Lee onto him. 미루고 있는 것 같은데. Yep. That's a correct observation. Mr. Lee, as ADOR's deputy CEO, was reporting to you who you met, what you discussed. 없이 보고하고 있다. Okay. So Mr. Lee was reporting to you who he met, what he discussed, and every step related to your independence. Are you saying that he did all of this nonsense on his own? And we need to respond. Answer, 네, yes. Wow. HYBE side asked, then shouldn't you have told him, stop wasting time and do your actual work instead of encouraging him? Minijin replied, why is it a waste of time? 왜 이게 쓸데없는 일이냐? He talked to me often at night, outside work hours. And besides, after I became CEO, I wasn't familiar with investment or that side of the business. Wow. Well, first of all, I gotta give him some credit because she sounds very like, not credit exactly, but where is it? When she was talking with the shaman over her plans, how to take NewJeans away from source music, like these. She's talking about investment, right? Do I have to do this here? I feel like I could get investment elsewhere. Why use Pang's money? And she's talking about potentially buying some other companies, like this part. First, let's plan for me to leave in July, but on the condition I'll stay on as a brand consultant. Then I'll create my own label outside. Whether HYBE invests in it or not, that's up to them. And I'll provide the Team N, NewJeans team, with consulting services for source. Big hits 30, Kakao 30, plus my shares. That's how I plan to set it up. What do you think? Your money shouldn't be involved, the shaman said, but I have to put in my money to make it mine. So she knows about investment. I don't know how she's good at investing or not, whether she's good at investing or not. But at least she cares. Did shaman teach her like investment skills or these strategies? I don't know. But when I first looked at these conversations, I was like, wow, where did she learn all these? Probably when she was working at SM Entertainment. I don't know, maybe she was raised like this. Like for example, this one, I'll remain as a freelancer, staying affiliated with Big Hit while also keeping a foot in Pana as a freelancer. So I'll use Bang Seok's money for mine and use Kakao's money for Pana. For that to happen, I would need to. So Shaman answered, "Yeah, go stir things up." Minijin said, "For that to happen, I will need to have some shares in Pana, right? Pana again is the label, hip hop label that houses some of the artists that NewJeans team has worked with. Namely, what was the rapper? There's a rapper, and if I remember correctly, the 250 producer. He's also part of the Pana, right? Yeah, he is. The guy who produced many of NewJeans songs. And Minijin played around with the idea of buying shares in that label. Pana stands for beasts and natives alike. Yeah. So she cares. She's an investor. But here he says that, and besides, after I became CEO, I wasn't familiar with investment or that side of business. Wow, all right. I think this sentence is worth digging into. All of a sudden, after she became CEO of ADOR, she forgot about her instincts as a shareholder, as an investor, it sounds like. Do you see it? 그걸 떠나서 제가 사장이 된 이후로 저는 투자나 그런 것에 문외한이었다. Selective memory? Or I don't know how to even call this. If someone tells me something, I can listen. HYBE was doing wrong and pointed out wrongdoing as natural. Why should that be stopped? They were mistreating us so much. People vent, and Mr. Lee might have said things to get on my good side. There is still no evidence that I instructed anything. 제가 지시했다는 증거가 없지 않나. Wow. She added, none of this would have happened if Bang Seok had kept his promises from the start. Honestly, I thought this was part of protecting ADOR. Well, none of this would have happened if Bang Seok simply didn't hire her. And that's one of just few regrets I have about Bang Seok. You know, I really respect the man, and I really respect his production skills and what he has done. But if there's one regret that I have about as a fan of HYBE artists and as a shareholder, it's the fact that he even cared about Minijin in the first place. But as I have written in the lyrics of my cover of Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar, which I've included in the so-called NewJeans mixtape, NewJeans Minijin mixtape. Go check it out if you haven't already. The last line that I wrote was this, right? Parroting Kendrick Lamar's line. It was God's plan to show y'all the liar. And the truth of the matter is, it was God's plan to show you the liar. So if Bang Seok didn't hire her, and this whole Minijin NewJeans saga didn't begin, the world wouldn't have had an opportunity to know this person as such a one of the biggest narcissists and liars we have seen in this industry. I don't know, maybe something worse could have happened. Who knows? But I might talk about this later when I have a chance. It was God's plan to show you're the liar. HYBE responded. From the messages. Wait. I thought this. None of this would have happened if Bang Seok. She said, none of this would have happened if Bang Seok had kept his promises from the start. Honestly, I thought this was part of protecting ADOR. The parent company kept attacking ADOR. As CEO, if I want to prevent NewJeans' rights from being violated, I need to know what is going on. Again, according to the court, there's nowhere in the conversation between Lee Sang-woo and Minijin that she cared about protecting NewJeans. HYBE responded, from the messages, it looks like you took all these conversations seriously. But when questioned, you say everything was done by Mr. Lee alone. Yet, you also say you did these things to protect ADOR from HYBE's attacks. Which one is true? Oof. Minijin answered, calling it serious is the lawyer's interpretation, meaning your interpretation. I saw it as my way of protecting ADOR. Let's see which side the judge decides to agree with. Right? HYBE then asked, when asked whether she knew that the deputy CEO, Mr. Lee, had met with capital firms or investors, Minijin replied, I didn't know. I'm not going to go back to the court document, but it says clearly that she was aware. But she here said, I didn't know. Regarding the KakaoTalk message where she said, the general consensus is that you should take them out. She admitted, 데리고 나와라. I'm not sure whether that's something that she said or the Lee said. The consensus, general consensus is that you should take them out, meaning you should take either NewJeans or ADOR out. She admitted, yes, that message was from me. Oh, okay, that was what she said. That was from me. But the topic I was talking about was completely different. I knew where Mr. Lee's focus was, so I answered in a way that matched what he was talking about. That's how I respond. I match the flow of the person I'm speaking with. What is she even saying here? What? But the topic I was talking about was completely different. All right. I knew where Mr. Lee's focus was. Okay. So I answered in a way that matched what he was talking about. That's how I respond. 제 대답의 패턴이 그렇다. That's the pattern of my response, me responding to things. I match the flow of the person I'm speaking with. HYBE's attorney asked, on March 14th, the day of the conversation, didn't you calculate how much the penalty would be if the contract were terminated? Minijin responded, that must have been him, Mr. Lee. When she was pressed, she replied, when the lawyers pressed, so did he calculate it without any instruction from you? She replied, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember. That's a classic answer, whether you say it in court or at the police station for a police investigation. I do not remember. I don't know. When HYBE suggested she was weighing the pros and cons of termination, Minijin said, honestly, I really don't remember. If I did consider it, I don't see why that's a problem. I'm the CEO. I'm allowed to think through different scenarios. When she was asked if she was claiming the deputy CEO acted on his own without her direction or consultation, she said, yes, I really don't know why they did that. Plural. So probably referring to Lee Sang-woo and Shin Dong-hoon, the internal director. Maybe the reason why HYBE is continuing to question her with the same question is try to drive home, hammer home the point they're making. And saying that, are you really saying that? Are you really saying that all those people, especially Lee Sang-woo, acted on his own without asking you anything in advance? Because they got all the receipts, right? HYBE's lawyers. HYBE pointed to KakaoTalk exchanges where Minijin scolded former deputy CEO E, and he responded with, I'm sorry, I'll try again. 다시 해보겠다. 죄송하다. 다시 해보겠다. And suggested he appeared to be acting like an employee following her instructions. Minijin replied, that's fabrication. 날조다. That's fabrication. What's fabrication? She said, that interpretation is fabricated. 카톡이 있으니까 그렇게 말했겠지만, so you have the KakaoTalk message, so the chances are I probably said that. But 내용에 아젠다가 없지 않나. There's no agenda in the content. Meaning, you're taking a message out of context. But the way she explains, so weird. What does she mean by 내용의 agenda? There's no agenda in the content in those chats. Hi, pressed again. Regarding the protest letter, you swore at the deputy CEO. Minijin pushed back. Isn't this speaker me? Isn't the speaker me? 화자는 저지 않냐? Okay. When HYBE asked if she actually remembered it, she answered, no, I don't. Oh, this is actually funny. So when HYBE said, yo, do you remember the protest letter? You are the one who swore at the deputy CEO. Minijin, for some reason, pushed back at the point. Isn't the speaker me? Isn't me who is speaking here? And she said, the HYBE lawyers said, oh, so you do remember it. All of a sudden, she said, no, I don't. When I continued, if you don't remember, how can you answer this way? She said, you're nitpicking. Wow, the pattern. 꼬투리 잡으신다. You're nitpicking. KakaoTalk threads aren't strictly chronological. Conversations overlap. I might be referring to something from earlier. Situations change depending on context. You're cherry-picking text to fit a narrative. That's why the interpretation comes out this way, like it says. Based on the content, it doesn't look like the agenda you're trying to push. HYBE then asked, isn't Mr. Lee a subordinate who received your instructions? Did he or did he not take direction from you? Let's see how she responded. She said, questions like that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. I cannot say yes and I cannot say no, which is why I explain the situation. In a hierarchy, instructions can exist, but you're tying things together that do not belong together. It feels like a leading question. So I'm clarifying that your framing is incorrect. All of a sudden, she reminds me of this student that at my college, or you know those students who write long essays, very complicated, just going on, and then when they receive like a bad grade, like C or something, they go up to the professor and say that why C? I should have received A+. And then the professor just gets sick of that. You know what I'm saying? Just going on, like abstract ideas, trying to say some things, but it's just not clear what she's trying to say. And of course, I guess Minijin's lawyers and Minijin have a strategy or something going on in this case during this hearing. Not sure whether it's gonna work out though in the end. But yeah, she said that in a hierarchy, instructions can exist, but you're tying things together that do not belong together. It feels like a leading question, 유도신문. So I'm clarifying that your framing is incorrect. HYBE pressed once more. At the time those KakaoTalk messages were exchanged, what was your relationship? Was he a subordinate or colleague? If he was a subordinate, are you saying he was acting oddly on his own? Minijin replied, I don't think he acted strangely. He acted in his own style. I didn't instruct him and I didn't agree with what he said. I simply listened to his thoughts. I didn't ask him to do anything or push him toward anything. You're trying to guide me into saying I order him. And I'm explaining that that's not the case. Okay. Moving on. Regarding the KakaoTalk message where she wrote, anyway, it has to stay casual conversation. 사담. Minijin explained. You need to read what comes before and after. Again, she's a lover of context. She said, I was warning him because if you promote NewJeans while criticizing HYBE, that could become a problem. I remember this very clearly. Oh, now she remembers. It has to stay casual. Meant that it wasn't about meeting investors. It was about meeting an analyst. Since HYBE wasn't properly promoting NewJeans results, I told him to just state the facts honestly. There's no need to badmouth HYBE. You're stitching together unrelated parts as if it's a single narrative. From my perspective, it's fiction. Those parts aren't even there. What we actually said was, you should apologize for not reporting NewJeans results correctly and for downplaying our achievements or their achievements. I don't want it to look like we are artificially pumping anything. By the way, it turns out Hee-jin met with, or she ordered Lee-sang-woo to meet with an investor to write a sell report on HYBE stock. Why? Because Eyelet copied NewJeans. When she was asked, why did it have to be casual, 사담, casual conversation? She answered, because it wasn't someone following instructions. It was about stating the fact. HYBE wasn't doing it, so the deputy CEO was talking about it that way. That's just how I speak. 이건 제 어투다. That's just how I speak. It wasn't some directive or coordinated plan. We weren't trying to exaggerate NewJeans' numbers. The point was that the issues and the downplaying of their achievements needed to be shown accurately. When HYBE asked, why does informing an analyst about NewJeans' performance need to be casual? Hee-jin replied, because HYBE wasn't doing it. They weren't doing it through an official route. That's how you describe it. What? That one didn't make sense. Next question. HYBE then presented KakaoTalk messages between Hee-jin and the deputy CEO referencing investors, including the Saudi Arabia Sovereign Wealth Fund and Singapore's GIC. HYBE said, at the time, the defendant showed interest in what Mr. Lee said. You asked what Singapore's investment authority does and why they would invest in ADOR. And after hearing Mr. Lee's answer, you responded, yeah, kind of what I expected. Thanks. To the court document, Singapore, no, probably investor. She sought to find investors to acquire ADOR. About the investor you're meeting, be careful what you say. People might think we're stirring all this up because we want to leave. Don't let it look that way. Once the dispute escalates, investors will start showing interest anyway. This remark aligns with the prior message Lee sent to Hee-jin. Lee sent to Hee-jin, where he reported meeting a contact who had discussed potential multi-billion-won investment sources interested in K Entertainment. Lee had noted that financial investors would be easier and more flexible to work with than strategic investors. Financial investors focus on profit and don't interfere in management. ADOR could grow independently from HYBE and eventually go public. They had IPO in mind. Hee-jin's response shows that she was aware of and encouraged such independence planning while being careful not to reveal this motive prematurely. Investor, analyst. Okay. All right, back to the article. We're almost there. Hee-jin responded, you're interpreting this completely wrong. You're asking the question as if I was curious or engaged. But if you read the message, it's obvious I didn't know anything about that. You deleted the middle part. You deleted the middle parts and jumped straight to the thank you. 근데 이걸 중간 내용을 삭제하시고 갑자기 thank you로 하냐? When HYBE pressed again, Mr. Lee mentioned potential investors and said he would keep an eye on them. And you replied, 그러게. Yeah. Isn't that a response to that? Heejin said, 그러게. Yeah? That response wasn't a reply to that part. Do you have any proof that I met investors? You don't, so I don't understand why you're asking as if I did. Okay. Regarding the HYBE's 7 Deadly Sins document, Heejin said, I don't remember. It wasn't even an important document. I didn't even know it was a memo written by the deputy CEO. I didn't think of it as a formal document. When she was asked whether she remembered sharing it over KakaoTalk, she replied, he talked about so many things that I honestly don't remember. Mr. Lee tends to ramble. I assumed it was just something he said in passing. When she was asked, isn't it convenient that you don't remember only these parts? She responded, it's not convenient. Nobody remembers every old KakaoTalk message. The way you're framing these questions is distorted. You're focusing on the wrong things. HYBE pointed out that Heejin had replied in the chat. I will organize and send it to you later. Or I will clean it up. I'll organize and send it to you later. Heejin answered. That actually proves I wasn't paying much attention. That's how I talk. If I don't feel like reading something, I say I will look at it later. If it's useless, I don't bring it up again. HYBE then asked, did you meet with the law firm Hee-jin for a consultation about the alleged plagiarism by Eyelet and the Unfair Competition Prevention Act and claims of being pushed, the 밀어내기 album pushing? Heejin answered, yes. When HYBE suggested her various discussions made it hard to believe these were simply imaginings or idle chatter, Heejin replied, even imagination or idle chatter isn't the exact description. Of course, I was worried and thinking about how to handle the situation, but none of that means I was giving instructions or that I was planning to break away with NewJeans. My biggest issue as a creator was wanting HYBE to apologize for the wrongs they did to me. If you look at other conversations, like the ones not submitted here, the ones that you guys didn't submit here, that becomes clear. I don't want to be trapped by words like imagination or chatter, which is why I'm explaining it this way. Regarding the KakaoTalk message referencing a connection that could shake HYBE, she said she didn't remember it and explained, I basically thought HYBE was mistreating us, and ultimately HYBE has the power. Even selling my shares required HYBE's approval. So of course I wondered, how do we resolve this? 문제가 있는데 어떻게 하면 풀 수 있을까? How do we resolve this? There was frustration, but also a sense that we still had to work together. Those things can exist at the same time. So when you negotiate with HYBE, you naturally think about what leverage you can use. That's why I said it was a mix of worry, 고민, imagination, 상상, concern, 걱정, and casual talk, 사람. There was no benefit to me in trying to take NewJeans. That would create a massive or critical problem. 크리티컬한 문제가 되고 that would create a critical problem. HYBE asked, Since when have you been discussing ways to resist HYBE with Mr. Lee? Manager responded, this wasn't actually resist. Yeah, this wasn't pressure. HYBE 압박이 아니라 HYBE attacked us. We were the ones harmed. We had problems even before NewJeans' debut. There were issues with other HYBE subsidiaries, issues with advertising contracts where our group wasn't prioritized even when the deals came to us, disagreements about performances and IP rights, and most seriously, HYBE's PR team refused to properly promote NewJeans. These things were happening simultaneously even before debut. Now again, Minijin and her lawyers probably submitted everything they could have gathered up to the court, but still the court said clearly, nope, NewJeans was treated fairly. So what are you guys talking about? HYBE then asked, did you, while speaking with the CEO of Company N, did you instruct Mr. Lee to find ways for investors to pull ADOR out of HYBE? Manager replied, those KakaoTalk messages are real, but the intention behind them is completely different from what you're suggesting. At this point, it's getting tedious. Sorry, let's move on. Regarding the court's finding that HYBE's audit was not illegal, Minijin said, I filed an objection. The case wasn't mine. This case is. In the third-party proceeding where Kim and Jang made their arguments, I had no way to respond. I still believe the audit was unlawful, which is why I objected. As for the administrative fine imposed on a former employee, she said, I wanted to contest it, but ADOR went ahead and paid a fine. But you were ADOR at the time, though. I didn't even have a chance to challenge it. My position was to dispute it, but once ADOR paid, there was nothing more I could do. 전 직원 과태료. I'm not sure which employee, former employee, that they're talking about here, because we need some clarification, because we're not necessarily talking about the former female employee who got harassed by Minijin and by Lee Sang-woo. Maybe this is someone else. Administrative fine was imposed on a former employee, and she wanted to contest it, but ADOR went ahead and paid the fine. But what are you talking about? You were the dictator of ADOR. Why are you all of a sudden trying to separate you from ADOR? I didn't even have a chance to challenge it. My position was to dispute it, but once ADOR paid, there was nothing more I could do. Now, and here is the former female employee of ADOR. When asked about repeatedly using mocking expressions toward a former employee, sorry. I'm kind of confused because Korean, the article is using the phrase 전 직원, former employee, in both cases. The identity is not clear, but let me go through this part. When she was asked about repeatedly using mocking expressions toward a former employee, Minijin responded, do you know that I contested that case? There were 4 issues that the Labor Office raised. I filed objections to 2 of them, and those 2 were overturned in summary proceedings. Yeah, so we are talking about Ms. Kwon, the employee who was harassed. The other 2 allegations aren't true either. It has been portrayed as if I repeatedly said those phrases in a short span of time, but that isn't accurate. I didn't use that tone toward her, which is why I filed an objection. Even the profanity, that was muttering to myself, and the target wasn't her. Because the recipient was different, I filed an objection, and the case is still in trial. Like I said in one of my songs that I made about Hee-jin and NewJeans, I hope she spends every dollar and cent in legal fees. And make Sejong lawyers, her lawyers, whoever it may be, make them happy. I really do. Because she's not going to agree with court judgments unless they side with her. HYBE then asked, you keep emphasizing that you appealed, but the record shows multiple phrases that are difficult to even speak aloud here in court. Are you acknowledging you said those words? Hee-jin said, yes, and continued, because she told me she was a fan of mine, Miss Kwon, we're talking about. We were close at first. She asked me to talk comfortably. If you take each phrase in isolation, like pap통, 띨띨. By the way, go check out the video that I made recently if you want to know the context behind these words. pap통 literally means like rice cooker, and 띨띨 means like stupid. Those aren't words with malicious intent. I use them in a joking, affectionate way, but the report acted as if I said them repeatedly. That ignores the context of our relationship. There are factual errors, which is why I objected. Wait, but the report acted as if I fired off all those phrases within 17 minutes, as if I said them repeatedly. Again, context matters. That's what Hee-jin is saying. Context matters. She added, regardless of intentions, the timing and content of her harassment complaint felt suspicious. Oh, that's why she said, 너 HYBE니? To that former employee, Miss Kwon. Are you HYBE? Are you literally, are you HYBE? Or are you part of HYBE? Or are you being backed by HYBE? Or are you being ordered by HYBE? What a thing to say to the victim, right? And from her perspective, she said that because the timing and content of her harassment complaint felt suspicious. Now, to briefly explain why that employee brought up the issue out of nowhere, because imagine all of a sudden one day you open a dispatch article about Hee-jin and see what Hee-jin was, how she was talking about her behind her back. Although it kind of seems like that she openly, said like curse words and bad things about, horrible things about her in a group chat. But the dispatch articles released the conversations where she said even more horrible things about Miss Kwon. I want to kill feminist B, and and saying that saying to Mr. Lee, you can't just sue her. Does she really have guts to react and take actions? No. And then if she does, her life is going to be ruined, right? That's how she got to learn about Hee-jin's true nature. True nature? Or even worse nature. And then she brought up the issue. And what she wanted was an apology. If Hee-jin privately apologized to her, the former employee, Miss Kwon, probably didn't even feel the need to set up the Instagram account, right, for that specific purpose, and get all the hate messages by Hee-jin's supporters if Hee-jin apologized in the first place privately. But why did she not? Because her ego didn't allow her to. That's my interpretation. When HYBE asked, so your attacks are pure, but any criticism toward you is malicious, Hee-jin replied, no. I think that phrase said by the Kim and lawyers is a basic summary of Hee-jin's nature. So your attacks are pure, but any criticism towards you is malicious. But at least Hee-jin replied, no, meaning that's not what I'm saying. Although she didn't explain why she said no here. HYBE also argued that Minijin had promised the deputy CEO a large financial benefit. HYBE stated, Minijin promised him 0.3% of ADOR shares in January 2024, even before he officially joined. That was worth around 3 billion Korean won. They went on to cite the deputy CEO's statement during the audit, where he supposedly said he expected at least the price of an apartment if he was going to go through hell, describing the motivation for joining the alleged plan to take NewJeans out of HYBE as financial compensation. This is something that we already knew about last year. There were reports about that. But then there were so many reports, so many facts and allegations that it kind of got, unnoticed, relatively. Was it here? Yeah, it was somewhere here. That the deputy CEO, Lee Sang-woo, was promised financially, with financial compensation. And to be specific, according to Kim and-jang, 0.3% of ADOR shares in January 2024, even before he officially joined. And that was worth roughly 3 billion Korean won. And Lee Sang-woo allegedly said he was expecting at least the price of an apartment if he was going to go through hell. 개고생하고 죽었다고 생각하면. Minijin, but denied the interpretation. He said those things because he was being pressured. He later apologized and said he had a change of heart. Which is exactly why I just do not feel sympathy for this guy. I don't know how Minijin convinced him to join her camp again, though. When HYBE presented a KakaoTalk message in which the deputy CEO said, "It would be great if I could afford an apartment and a trip abroad," and Minijin replied, "So around 2 to 3 billion won. That will work. That will do it." Minijin said, "That has nothing to do with the core issues here. It's not important. It's not important." Again, it's all about money, 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 and greed, greed, and greed. HYBE then asked Minijin whether she knew that while she was CEO. Oh, this is interesting. And this is the end of this article. Congratulations. This is super interesting and funny and mysterious and shocking at the same time. Check this out. HYBE then asked Minijin whether she knew that while she was CEO, an ADOR stylist allegedly received about 7 billion won in styling fees directly from advertisers on top of her salary. We heard about this issue, but did we know about the exact amount? Well, sorry, not 7 billion won. Okay, that was too much. 700 million won, which is still a lot. 7억 won? 700 million? 100만, 1000만, 10만, 100만, 1000만, KRW to USD, which is around 100만, 1000만, 15. Yeah, 477,000 USD. And the ADOR stylist, received that amount in styling fees directly from advertisers on top of her salary. Minijin replied, "That's completely false." Or, "I don't know. 전혀 모른다. I do not know." And Sorry. That's completely false. Even the question is wrong. It wasn't outside her salary. It was incentive-based pay. The police closed the case with no charges, allowing her to work externally actually saved ADOR money on incentives. All right, this is why some people are seriously speculating whether Minijin has some sort of internal connections with police. Hope not. I really hope not. HYBE pressed further. Are you aware prosecutors ordered supplementary investigation? Check this out. And that the National Tax Service conducted an audit of HYBE and its labels in July 2025. Yeah, we all remember that. Concluding that the 700 million Korean won should have been counted as ADOR revenue, and thus imposed corporate tax and penalties. Are you aware of this? Minijin answered, I have no idea. The case wasn't indicted. HYBE probably chose not to explain anything on purpose. What? HYBE probably chose not to explain anything on purpose. That's what I strongly believe. Even if there was a penalty, if ADOR hadn't paid those incentives externally, ADOR itself would have had to cover that amount. HYBE asked, so you're saying HYBE intentionally failed to respond during a tax audit in order to be hit with additional penalties? Minijin replied, yes. That was the end of the article. Oh, wow. You're saying HYBE intentionally failed to respond during a tax audit in order to be hit with additional penalties? Minijin replied, yes. At the time, in July, when the National Tax Service, stormed HYBE, probably, HYBE's anti-camps or Minijin supporters, they tried to, frame it as if HYBE was this evil corporation. That's why these authorities are storming in. But it turns out, ADOR was a problem. The problem originated at the time when she was a CEO. I'm so glad that many of the ADOR employees who used to work with her, they all left HYBE once she resigned and left the company. I wonder how many of them are still remaining at HYBE though. Because at this point, at least one person is kind of complicit in these illegal business practices. It turns out. I wonder how many more people were involved. All right. Congratulations. You guys now finished reading her testimony during this hearing. So, once again, what becomes impossible to ignore in this section is how aggressively Minijin distances herself from her own messages and her deputy CEO's behavior and her decisions that were already documented. Like nearly every key KakaoTalk log is met with the same answers, same pair of answers. 1, I don't remember. 2, that's not what I meant. And whenever memory fails, she replaces that with shifting context, reinterpretation, or claims that HYBE omitted parts of the conversation. But the core issue is that her explanations do not align with each other or with the record already acknowledged by the court in the NewJeans verdict, which is why I said that this might be the very, one of the easiest cases to, fight for Hee-jin lawyers, because the receipts are all there. And which is why I was wondering in my last video, who's the audience for this hearing? Is she really trying to convince the judge? Because these types of talks could work if she's trying to manipulate the public, right? And that worked to some extent last year with her press conference. Although there's a chance that she hired a lot of people and she used bots to make it seem like the majority of the public is siding with her. But the truth is, many people did believe her and kind of sided with her after that press conference. So her, way of talking and her way of saying that I do not know, you're wrong, it's misinterpretation, it's all edited, that might work for some people, but not in court though. And she insists she never knew about non-compete clause, for example, and never discussed financial leverage, and never encouraged staff to search for wrongdoing, and never planned independence, never considered investors, and never attempted to create grounds for disputes. But the messages that were cited in the ruling, the court ruling, contradict this, right? Like discussions about governance changes, instructions to gather evidence, decisive evidence, and calculations of penalty fees, and messages about approaching analysts, and repeated comments about breaking from HYBE. It's all there. But each time these come up, she adjusts the meaning. Like when messages show negotiation over put option valuations, for example, she says her lawyer did everything without her input. And when text suggests that she was involved in discussions about authority over Heejin's contracts, she claims she had no idea. And when the deputy CEO's HYBE 7 Deadly Sins document appears, she says she never asked for it and never read it. And when logs show her directing him to gather leverage through Slack, she calls it just talk, right? Slack. Forget the FTC angle for now. Focus on whether we can file lawsuits for business obstruction or breach of duty. Look for any legal basis, corporate law, breach of trust, whatever. Just find evidence. Collect as much as possible. You did well finding that last one, but look for more crucial ones. The more, the better. You found some in Slack. There should be more in messages involving Lestrafim, NewJeans, someone else, or Islet. They cannot delete all their old Slack logs. This indicates that managing order evidence collection targeting HYBE not to defend the defendants, NewJeans, but to find potential legal grounds to frame HYBE's actions as misconduct and thereby justify ADOR's separation from HYBE, the court said. So the contradictions build very quickly. She claims to be too inexperienced to understand corporate governance or investment structure or contract renewal authority or penalty calculations. Yet, she confidently claims she was analyzing HYBE's misconduct, correcting structural injustices, and interpreting power dynamics, and defending NewJeans contract, defending, or talk about the contracts, right? And she's positioning herself as someone who didn't understand anything, except for the part where she supposedly understood everything. You know what I'm saying? That's a contradiction. And her handling of the deputy CEO's role is especially inconsistent. Deputy 이상우, because when his messages make her look strategically involved, she says that he acted alone. And when the same messages portray HYBE negatively, she adopts them as truth. So he's either an unreliable subordinate or a crucial witness, depending on which is more convenient. So it's selective credibility. she keeps his statements that help her, and she discard the ones that do not help her. And the issue of financial incentives, the 0.3% stake conversation, that shows the same pattern. The laws exist, and HYBE presented them, but she avoids addressing whether the promise was made by calling the deputy's testimony coerced by HYBE. Instead of clarifying, she dismisses the entire topic as irrelevant. And the investor outreach explanation also, suffers from these contradictions, right? She says she wasn't curious, didn't understand investments, and never engaged. But the messages show active questions and responsive interest. But her fallback is always the same. If it helps her, she knew. If it hurts her, she didn't. And as for her explanation for the 7 deadly sins, 죄악, this memo document, not remembering it and not realizing its significance, that clashes with her ability to recall older emotional details when they support her narrative. Do you know what I'm saying? Her just going on and on with the details from her encounter with Pang Xiu. We don't even know whether that's true or not, right? Those details that she's saying. Maybe she's creating those out of thin air. Every little detail that she included. Yet, in this case, she conveniently forgets everything. So that selective memory becomes too convenient too frequently. And the claim that HYBE intentionally avoided responding to tax inquiries so that penalties would fall, so that they would have to pay the penalties, that's another problem, right? Because even at face value, 가산세, it's illogical. It portrays HYBE as deliberately harming itself to spite her, to say, because she's saying that HYBE intentionally avoided responding to tax inquiries so that penalties or responsibility would fall on her. That's the logic, I'm assuming, even though it just sounds very strange. And it's a conclusion that requires assumptions, to say the least, not evidence. But I was shocked, especially with this part. So the result we see is not a cohesive defense, but a shifting story. A story that's shifting very violently, very frequently. And she casts herself as someone who never initiates, never plots, never directs, never anticipates consequences, yet also claims deep insight into power structures, systemic injustice, and corporate manipulation. And again, the NewJeans ruling, written by the judges after carefully reviewing extensive logs, described her action as coordinated and aimed at manufacturing grounds for conflict. So, the part 2 of her testimony that we just read does not contradict that assessment, the ruling. If anything, her evasiveness and the selective memory and her reinterpretations reinforce this conclusion. So yeah, I think by the end, this part 2 feels more like an attempt to, feels less like an factual account and more like an attempt to outrun her own written record. So when you put both parts together, the contrast is pretty clear, right? In part 1, she positions herself as the victim, like this creative genius who was betrayed by HYBE, Park Ji-won, and Pang Xiu, and the person who endured everything for the kids, for NewJeans. But in part 2, when the questions turn to documented behavior, like the messages, the instructions, and the inconsistencies, the entire narrative cracks. So the gaps become super obvious, and the memory loss becomes super selective, and the excuses just pile up. Whew. Yeah. At this point, the court records themselves tell a story that's very different from the one she wants the public to believe. But the thing is, right now, the public has turned against her, but still, she's got some followers. And let me tell you, those followers, they are different within this part. So what I'm trying to say is that some of her followers probably really believe in what she's saying, but some others, they're not necessarily her followers, but trying to stir things up and trying to make it seem like they're agreeing with her by voicing her opinions because they do not like HYBE, whether out of jealousy or whatever, out of spite, because she's a very convenient tool for them to use to try to damage HYBE's reputation. You know what I'm saying? And I'm pretty sure you guys have come across some of those people online. And I kind of am curious what NewJeans members and their parents are thinking at this point. I wonder whether they have read these articles. All right, now the question to you guys. Do you think the public will finally reassess Heejin's narrative after seeing what was said in court, especially those who initially sided with her last year after her press conference? And do you think NewJeans' fate becomes clearer after this, or even more complicated? And more importantly, after everything revealed in these hearings, where do you think this entire situation goes from here? Let me know your thoughts by writing comments in the comment section. And as always, let's stay positive, respectful, and classy. 수고하셨습니다. Great job. Congratulations. And peace and love. Bye-bye.